When I first bought my home in Maple Ridge Estates, I imagined a peaceful suburban neighborhood where life moved slowly and predictably. The streets were lined with trimmed lawns, pastel-colored houses, and neighbors who waved at each other from across driveways. At least, that was the dream. The realities, however, came with something I wasn't expecting, Karen. Every neighborhood had ones. People said, I thought they were exaggerating. But mine came with her own HOA badge of self-appointed authority and a pair of binoculars that seemed permanently glued to her face. The first time a package went missing, I brushed it off as a minor inconvenience. The carrier might have delivered it to the wrong house. Maybe porch pirates passed by. It was a simple set of car floor mats I had ordered online. Nothing valuable or exciting enough to raise alarms. I submitted a complaint to the delivery company, got a refund, and moved on. But 2 weeks later, another package went missing. This time it was a replacement charger for my laptop. 3 days after that, a box with some clothes I'd ordered disappeared before I even got the delivery notification. It wasn't until the fourth package, a birthday gift for my niece, that I felt something twist inside my gut. A mix of irritation, suspicion, and a sense of being watched. I started paying closer attention to my surroundings, especially to the people who seemed too interested in my front porch. And one person fit that description perfectly. Karen. Karen lived diagonally across from my house, right on the corner where she could see not just my home, but practically half the street. Most neighbors kept to themselves, but she did the opposite. She hovered around the sidewalk like she owned it, scanned every car that entered, and made it a personal mission to investigate anything she deemed suspicious, which somehow included delivery trucks, maintenance workers, visiting relatives, and even kids walking their dogs. If something happened in the neighborhood, you could bet she knew about it before anyone else. She would appear at HOA meetings armed with printed-out photos, time-stamped notes, and accusations ready to fire. At first, I didn't suspect her. Sure, she was nosy, but stealing packages seemed like a different level of petty. But then, strange things started happening. When the fifth package went missing, a box containing a pair of noise-canceling headphones, I happened to step outside a little after the delivery time to check the mailbox. There she was, standing in front of her house, arms crossed, pretending to inspect her rose bushes. She kept glancing at my front porch like she was waiting for something. The moment she saw me, she turned around abruptly and rushed back inside, as if I had caught her in the middle of something she shouldn't be doing. Over the next few days, I noticed that every time a delivery truck entered the neighborhood, Karen would appear outside within minutes. She walked her dog, an overweight chihuahua that trotted unwillingly behind her at least 5 times a day, always around the hours when packages typically arrived. She would stroll past my driveway, linger longer than necessary, look at my porch, and sometimes even stop in front of my house to tie her shoe, even though she wore sandals. It didn't take long for patterns to emerge. Packages only went missing when I wasn't home. Packages delivered when I was inside, or when I opened the door immediately after hearing the knock, remained untouched. This meant it wasn't random. Someone was watching. Someone waited for the right moment. Someone living close enough to see my comings and goings. The moment that really sharpened my suspicion happened one Thursday afternoon. I had taken the day off from work and decided to handle some repairs around the house. A package arrived, a small brown box that I knew contained some camera accessories I had ordered. I brought it inside, opened it, checked the contents, and went about my days. Later, as I stepped outside to throw away some trash, I saw Karen standing across the street, looking at my porch with a confused expression. She must have expected a package to still be there. She seemed almost disappointed. When she noticed me, she forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and scurried back into her home. Her behavior wasn't just odd, it was calculating. To be sure, I wasn't imagining things. I casually asked a few neighbors if they had experienced missing deliveries. Most said no. One neighbor, Mrs. Grant did mention she lost a parcel last month, but she assumed it was porch thieves who struck at night. That didn't match my situation, since most of my packages disappeared during the day. Another neighbor suggested I install cameras, but I wanted to be absolutely certain before I took that step. That's when an idea hit me. I decided to stay home the next time a package was delivered, but pretend that I wasn't. I parked my car down the streets, walked home through the back alley, and kept the curtains slightly open so I could watch my front yard without being seen. I waited. 2 days later, around noon, a delivery van stopped in front of my house. The driver placed a medium-sized box on my porch, snapped the usual photo, and drove off. My heart beat a little faster as I ducked behind the living room window. Not 5 minutes later, the front door across the street opened. Out stepped Karen. She didn't have her dog with her. She wasn't carrying gardening tools. She wasn't holding trash bags. She simply walked across the street with purpose, like she had been waiting. She didn't even bother looking around to check if anyone was watching. The audacity was shocking. She reached my driveway, stepped right up to my porch, grabbed the box, tucked it under her arms, and briskly walked back to her house. She didn't look guilty. She looked practiced, efficient, like she had done this many times before. I felt a surge of anger so intense that I had to grip the windowsill to stop myself from running outside and confronting her right then. But I forced myself to stay calm. Bursting out at that moment would only alert her that she'd been caught, and she'd become more cautious. No. If I wanted to put an end to this and expose her for what she was, I needed undeniable proofs. I needed a plan. For the rest of the day, I replayed the moment in my mind. Her arrogance, her smugness, her complete confidence that she would get away with it. I wondered how many other packages she had stolen. Not just from me but from others. I thought about all the neighbors who trusted her or tolerated her because of her active role in the HOA. If I accused her without evidence, she would twist the story and turn the entire HOA against me. She had influence, annoying, but influence nonetheless. But what she didn't have was foresight. She had no idea I had seen her, and she had no idea that she had just triggered the beginning of her downfall. That night, I sat at my dining table with my laptop, researching ways to catch package thieves. Cameras were the obvious option, but even footage could be argued or denied. Karen was manipulative enough to claim it was a misunderstanding or that she found the package and intended to return it. I needed something that removed all wiggle room, something that made denial impossible, something that left a mark literally. And that was when the idea of a die trap came to me. I didn't plan revenge often, but when I did, I made sure it was poetic. After witnessing Karen steal my package with bold confidence, I knew I was dealing with someone who had perfected her routine. She didn't hesitate, didn't look guilty, and didn't even bother checking if anyone was watching. That wasn't the behavior of a first-time thief. It was the behavior of someone who had been doing it so long she felt untouchable. That realization made something settle deep inside me, a cold determination to gather evidence so solid she couldn't talk her way out of it. Even with her usual HOA manipulations, the neighborhood trusted her, or at least tolerated her. She had positioned herself as the unofficial watchdog of Maple Ridge Estates, constantly patrolling, reporting minor infractions, and reminding everyone of the community standards she practically worshipped. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman obsessed with enforcing rules was breaking federal law right under everyone's noses. I spent that night planning exactly how to expose her. The next morning, I drove to the nearest electronics store and purchased a set of discreet security cameras, one small enough to hide under the gutters. Inside, porch lights. Behind, planters. The employee recommended a weatherproof model with high resolution and night vision. But what sold me was the motion-triggered recording feature. It would notify me instantly whenever someone stepped onto my property. Perfect. Before installing anything, I checked for angles that would capture her face clearly. I didn't want grainy, shadowy footage that she could claim wasn't her. I needed crystal clear proof. So I spent nearly an hour walking around my porch, crouching by the steps, leaning against the walls, imagining every possible way she might approach. It felt like prepping a crime scene. Except I was the one trying to catch the criminal. I installed the cameras with careful precision. One was nestled inside a decorative fake plant I kept near the door. Another was tucked under the roof's overhang, half hidden behind a gutter. A third camera faced the street, giving me a full view of whoever walked toward my house. If she so much as stepped foot on my driveway, I'd see it. Once the cameras were set, I synced them to my phone. The live feed was crystal clear. Anything moving on my porch, even a leaf blown by the wind, triggered a soft notification. I felt a small surge of satisfaction. The trap was forming, but cameras alone weren't enough. I needed to be absolutely certain that the footage caught her in the act at the perfect moment. To do that, I needed a bait package she wouldn't resist. And luckily, I already had one coming. The next morning, I woke early and positioned myself by the window, hidden behind the blinds. A delivery notice had told me a package would arrive sometime before noon. My heart thumped with anticipation, the way someone might feel before executing a carefully planned operation. Even though it was legal and justified, I felt the adrenaline of someone preparing to uncover a secret. At 11:27 a.m., the delivery truck slowed to a stop in front of my house. I watched the driver hop out, walk to my porch, drop off a medium-sized box, take the usual picture, and drive away. The moment the truck turned the corner, I felt tension coil inside me. Everything was in place. Now, it was time to see if Karen would take the bait again. Minutes went by. 5, 10, 12. I resisted the urge to peek outside physically and instead watched the live camera feed on my phone. Every time a car drove by or a neighbor walked their dog, my chest tightened. I waited for the familiar figure with her short blonde bob and her permanently annoyed walk. Every passing moment made me more restless. Then, at exactly 11:44 a.m., I heard the faint creak of a door through my microphone. And there she was. The camera pointing toward the street caught her stepping out of her house with the same practiced nonchalance as before. She wasn't carrying anything. No leash, no gardening tools, no purse, nothing that would explain why she was outside. She wasn't even pretending to check her mailbox. She simply glanced both ways, saw the coast was clear, and walked across the street with purpose. I zoomed in on the feed, my pulse picking up. She walked straight toward my house, her eyes locked on the package like a hawk spotting prey. She didn't slow down, didn't hesitate, didn't even check for cameras. Her arrogance was almost impressive. She reached my porch and looked around briefly, not to see if anyone was watching, but to confirm no one was in immediate view. She bent down, grabbed the package, tucked it under her arm, and briskly walked back across the street. I watched the whole thing in real time, feeling equal parts furious and triumphant. I had her. Not just the act, the exact moment her hand touched the box. The moment she lifted it. The moment she hurried back into her house. I had everything. But I wasn't done. I wanted this footage from multiple angles. I wanted it to be foolproof, undeniable, irrefutable. So I waited until she closed her door, then replayed the recordings from all 3 cameras. The front-facing one caught her face perfectly, every wrinkle, every squint of her eyes. The porch camera captured her picking up the package, and the overhead camera caught her entire approach and exit. It was perfect. I felt a grin tug at my lips. She had no idea that this time she wasn't just stealing from me. She was handing me the evidence I needed to bring her down. But something still nagged at me. If I confronted her right away, she would go into denial mode, twisting stories like she always did. She declaimed she thought the package was misdelivered, or she was protecting it from porch pirates, or she planned to return it later. I knew how people like her operated. They never admitted wrongdoing without being cornered from every angle. So I held back. I didn't call the police yet. I didn't message the HOA. I didn't march across the street to demand my package back. I simply saved the videos in multiple locations on my phone, my laptop, and a cloud backup. Then I turned my attention to the next step, gathering even more evidence. The next day, I intentionally ordered several cheap items online, nothing valuable, just enough to generate a series of deliveries. My goal wasn't to lose money. It was to prove a pattern. A single stolen package could be twisted into a misunderstanding. But 4, 5, or 6, that was a habit. That was a crime spree. Over the next week, the deliveries started coming in. And like clockwork, so did Karen. Every time a package arrived during the hours I wasn't visibly home, she appeared minutes later. Sometimes she walked briskly. Other times she pretended to pause at her mailbox or adjust her lawn sprinkler before slipping onto my porch. But she stole them every single time. She had no idea that every approach, every movement, every theft was being recorded. Each new recording made my case stronger. I could practically hear her future excuses breaking apart before she even said them. With each stolen package, I saved the footage, labeled it with time and dates, and stored it with the precision of someone preparing for battle. On the 4th day of my surveillance operation, something incredible happened. Right after Karen stole another one of my bait packages, her husband came outside carrying a grocery bag. He saw the box tucked under her arm, asked her something, and pointed toward my house. Her reaction, panic. She snapped at him, almost dropped the box, and hurried him inside before he could look again. It was the first crack I saw in her confidence, and it fueled me even more. By the end of the week, I had footage of her stealing 6 packages. 6. From the street-facing camera, the porch camera, the overhead camera. She was caught from every angle imaginable. It wasn't just evidence. It was a cinematic compilation of her crimes, and I knew exactly when and how to use it. But I wasn't finished yet. Cameras proved she was the thief. Yes, but I wanted something more dramatic. Something that would make her theft impossible to deny, not just to the HOA, but to the entire neighborhood. Something that would expose her in a way she could never hide. And that was where the die trap came in. I watched the footage one last time, committing every detail to memory. Her timing, her path, her habits. I took note of how she approached, how she lifted the boxes, how she rushed away. Everything mattered. Because the next package she stole wouldn't just disappear. It would explode. Once I had undeniable footage of Karen stealing my packages, the next phase of my plan felt almost satisfying. It wasn't enough to catch her. I wanted consequences that she couldn't talk her way out of, twist into a misunderstanding, or bully her way around using her HOA influence. She had humiliated neighbors for years, enforcing petty rules, issuing warnings, and threatening fines for infractions, like leaving trash cans out for 5 extra minutes. But behind that mask of authority, she was quietly committing a very real, very serious crime. It was poetic justice waiting to happen. The cameras had done their job. Now it was time for the die trap. I had read about die packs before. Banks often used them against robbers. They were designed to burst after a short delay, staining money and criminals alike with bright, impossible to wash off ink. But those devices were specialized and expensive. I didn't need an industrial-grade security die. I needed something simpler, cheaper, and just effective enough to make her theft undeniable. So I started studying homemade die traps. Some used glitter bombs, funny, but too easy for her to brush off. And honestly, glitter was messy for me too. I wanted something more dramatic, something that screamed caught red-handed literally. I read through dozens of DIY blogs, chemistry hobbyist forums, and prank videos. Eventually, I landed on a solution that felt perfect. A small, pressure-triggered pouch filled with a mix of bright blue indelible dye, the same kind used in anti-theft tags for clothing stores. It was safe, non-toxic, but incredibly stubborn. Once it stained your skin, it lingered for days, sometimes weeks. Exactly what I needed. The hardest part was finding the right ingredients. I didn't want to buy everything from one place and raise suspicion, even though the items were relatively harmless. So I drove to different stores over 2 days, craft shops, hardware stores, and even a fishing supply shop for a specific type of dye that reacted strongly to pressure. By the time I returned home, I had everything: a small balloon-like pouch, pressure-sensitive insert, powdered fabric dye, liquid coloring concentrate, a thin but tough outer wrap, a cardboard box with just enough reinforcement to hold everything without leaking. The assembly took hours. I worked slowly and carefully at my kitchen table, measuring dye concentrations, mixing them until the color was a deep, unforgiving cobalt blue. It looked almost beautiful under the light, smooth, glossy, and absolutely destructive if spilled. I filled the pouch halfway, sealed it tightly, then placed a pressure trigger underneath it. The idea was simple. As soon as someone picked up the package and carried it off, the pouch would burst after a slight shift in angle. Not immediately. I wanted Karen to get all the way home with it. I wanted her to be inside her house, where the mess would cause maximum chaos. I wrapped the pouch in tissue paper, placed it inside a real shipping box with some harmless packing material, and added a fake invoice printed from a random template online. The package looked legitimate: clean label, barcode, tracking number, everything. If anything, it looked too official. I smiled to myself. Perfect bait needed to look perfect. But I wasn't done yet. I placed the package on my porch, not too obvious, but visible enough to tempt her. I checked the camera angles, adjusting them until the box was in the center of 3 overlapping fields of view. Anyone approaching would be recorded from every direction, leaving her no room to deny it later. After everything was set, I sat inside, watching the camera feed like a security guard on high alert. I didn't have to wait long. At 3:12 p.m., the delivery truck rolled down my street. My heart thudded with anticipation, even though the driver didn't actually bring anything. This package wasn't delivered. It was planted, but the sound of any truck always put Karen on high alert. I knew her patterns well enough by now. Sure enough, at 3:19 p.m., her front door opened. She stepped out wearing gardening gloves and old, pathetic attempt to appear innocent. She scanned left and right, then walked toward her mailbox as if she had suddenly remembered to check it. Her acting skills were terrible. No one checked an empty mailbox 3 times a day. Then she spotted the package on my porch. Even from a distance, her expression changed. She straightened her back, narrowed her eyes, and her pace picked up. She looked like a cat who had spotted a mouse that didn't know it was doomed. I watched on the live feed as she casually strolled toward my house. She paused for half a second at the edge of my driveway to glance around again. The street was quiet. No one nearby. Not a single witness except the cameras she didn't know about. She walked up my porch steps with fake confidence and bent down to grab the package. The moment her hand touched it, I held my breath. She lifted the box. Nothing happened yet. Of course, I had designed the trigger with a deliberate delay. I wanted her to get comfortable, confident, unaware of the blue apocalypse she was carrying. She tucked the box under her arm, looked around one more time, then hurried back across the street. I watched her disappear into her house, closing the door behind her. Then, 3 seconds later, it happened. The front-facing camera caught a faint thud sound from inside her house, followed by a muffled yelp. The microphone picked up the noise more clearly, a sudden shriek that could only be described as horror mixed with disbelief. I switched to the camera facing her house. Her front door flew open, and she stumbled outside, flailing and covered, absolutely drenched in vivid blue dye. It soaked her hair, stained her face, dripped down her clothes, and streaked across her arms like she had lost a fight with a paint factory. even from across the street. It was unmistakable. The dye was everywhere. She ran into her yard screaming, waving her arms wildly. I could hear her shrieking things like, What is this? Oh my God. It come off. My clothes. My carpets. Call somebody." She tried rubbing her arms, but it only smeared the dye further. The more she tried to wipe it, the deeper the stains spread. Her hands looked like she had dipped them in blue ink. Her hair was dripping streaks down her neck. It was spectacular. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Her husband rushed out, horrified. He stared at her like he had just found a Smurf melting in the sun. "What happened?" He yelled. She screeched. "The neighbor. He set me up." That line alone made me laugh out loud. Her husband blinked in confusion. "Why were you opening his package?" She stuttered. He insisted again and again, until she snapped and yelled. I thought IT was misdelivered, but the cameras told the real story. I quietly saved the feed and continued watching the chaos unfold. She ran inside, leaving a trail of blue footprints across her driveway. Her husband followed her, and through the microphones, I heard arguments erupting, things falling, doors slamming. Honestly, it was better than TV. I waited a full hour before doing anything. Then, calmly and without emotions, I gathered all the footage, every angle, every clip, every recording from the past week. I compiled them into a neat folder labeled Evidence. Package Theft. Karen M's. Then I emailed the folder to the HOA board, the local police department's non-emergency line, and to add that final sweet flavor of justice, the neighborhood group email thread. By the time the evening rolled around, the entire neighborhood knew. And the HOA, for the first time ever, wasn't on her side. But that part of the story belongs to the next heading. The moment I clicked send on the email containing the video evidence, a strange calm settled over me. For days I had been planning, observing, documenting, plotting every detail. And finally, the truth was out, sent to the HOA board, the local police, and the entire neighborhood. Now it was no longer my burden alone. It was everyone's problem, and Karen could no longer hide behind her usual lies, threats, and HOA privilege. The trap had been sprung, and now I simply had to wait for the explosion. And explode it did. The first reply came surprisingly fast. The HOA president, Mr. Donnelly, a man who usually took hours to acknowledge even the most urgent complaints, responded in less than 10 minutes. His email was unusually serious, devoid of his usual politeness or corporate-sounding disclaimers. It read simply, "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. The board will be addressing this immediately." Immediately. That word alone told me I had hit a nerve. Within the hours, more neighbors chimed in. Some were shocked. Others weren't. A few admitted they had lost packages before and had quietly suspected porch thieves, never imagining the thief might be the self-appointed neighborhood enforcer. My phone buzzed relentlessly as message after message poured into the community thread. I knew something was off about her. Explains the 3 packages I lost in May. She always acted like she owned the street. OMG, is that blue dye? People were already sharing screenshots of the video clips I provided, spreading them around with disbelief and amusement. Someone even made a slowed-down replay of Karen walking home with the package and synced dramatic music to the moment the dye exploded. It was childish, sure, but I couldn't deny it was hilarious. As the digital chaos spread, things in the physical world escalated even faster. Around 6 p.m., the HOA president and 2 board members walked straight toward Karen's house. They weren't smiling. They weren't carrying their usual folders or clipboards. They looked like a trio of grim-faced judges marching to deliver a verdict. I stood on my porch, pretending to water my plants while keeping a discreet eye on the situation. The HOA members knocked. No answer. They knocked again. Harder. Still nothing. But then, through the frosted window beside the door, I saw a flash of movement. Karen's unmistakable silhouette. She was clearly home. She was clearly hiding. And she was clearly still stained a deep, humiliating shade of blue. Another knock. Then the HOA president raised his voice. Karen, we need to speak with you immediately regarding a serious complaint. A muffled voice from inside responded. Something like, go away, followed by frantic sounds of shuffling furniture. She was barricading herself in. The HOA president exchanged a look with the other board members before speaking loudly enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. We have video evidence of multiple thefts. This cannot be ignored. I almost felt bad. Almost. The neighborhood had begun to gather, not openly, but in that nosy suburban way everyone pretends is a coincidence. People walked their dogs slower than usual. Others stood on their driveways pretending to check the mail they had already checked earlier. A few even pulled out lawn chairs. Word was spreading fast. Karen, the queen of complaints, the goddess of HOA warnings, the terror of trash cans and lawn heights, had been caught stealing like a petty criminal. Finally, Karen burst out of the door, throwing it open so forcefully that it slammed into the wall. The sight was more dramatic than anyone could have imagined. She was still blue. Even after hours of scrubbing, judging by the rawness of her skin, she hadn't managed to remove the dye. Her clothes were ruined. Her hair had streaks of navy, and her arms were blotched with different shades of cobalt and indigo. She looked like she had been dunked into a vat of ink. The gasps from nearby neighbors were audible. She pointed a shaking finger at the HOA president. You, she screamed. You need to do something about him. She spun around wildly, her eyes locking on me. He*s attacking me. He*s dangerous. He*s setting traps. He*s unstable. The HOA president didn't even flinch. Karen, we saw the videos. She froze. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a malfunctioning robot. That footage is doctored. She finally yelled. It's fake. He probably hired someone who looks like me. Or he edited it. He's trying to make me look bad. The HOA treasurer stepped forward, arms crossed. You were recorded from 3 angles, she said plainly. 3. Karen faltered. Her voice quieted just enough to crack. This is harassment, she whispered. He's been targeting me. Everyone knows he hates me. For the first time, the HOA president sighed. A deep, disappointed sigh. Karen, even if that were true, it does not explain why you repeatedly removed packages from his property and carried them into your home. He left them there. I was protecting the neighborhood. From what? The secretary asked. Cardboard. A few neighbors quietly snorted. Karen clenched her fists, the blue dye smearing even more across her palms. She looked around desperately, searching for anyone to support her. But all she saw was a circle of faces. Some amused, some angry, some vindicated. Not a single one defended her. That was when she snapped. You all jealous. She shouted. I keep this neighborhood together. I enforce the rules because none of you care about them. Without me, this place would fall apart. The HOA president raised his voice, calm but firm. Karen, you are suspended from the HOA board, effective immediately pending a full investigation. Those words hit harder than any dye bomb. Karen staggered back as if physically struck. Her hands slapped against the doorframe, leaving blue fingerprints everywhere. You can do that, she sputtered. I am the HOA. No, the president replied. You not. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with years of resentment finally given permission to surface. Neighbors who had endured her nitpicking, her complaints, her power trips, they all stood quietly, almost in awe that the downfall they never dared hope for was playing out in front of them. Karen looked around one last time, trembling with anger and humiliation. When she saw the smirks, the whispering, the phones recording everything, she snapped completely. Fine, she shrieked. This neighborhood is full of idiots. All of yous. I hope your houses fall apart. I hope your lawns die. I hope. Her husband appeared in the doorway, weary and embarrassed. He gently grabbed her arms. Karen, please stop. She jerked away, but he held her more firmly this time. Enough, he murmured, pulling her inside. Just stop. The door slammed shut with finality. And just like that, the queen had fallen. The HOA president turned to me, his expression softening. We'll be in touch, he said. And thank you for handling this the right way. Most people wouldn't have been so patient. I nodded, maintaining an appearance of calm, even though inside I felt a warm wave of vindication. For once, doing things slowly, methodically, and legally had paid off. As the crowd dispersed, the conversations began to buzz with excitement. Did you see her hair? She looked like she dipped her head in a swimming pool full of ink. She deserved every bit of that. Finally, someone stood up to her. This neighborhood might actually be peaceful now. For the rest of the night, I sat on my porch, sipping tea and watching the quiet street return to something resembling normal. No more lurking figures trying to steal boxes. No more power-hungry HOA tyrant barking orders. No more constant tension. Just the soft hum of crickets and the faint glow of porch lights. Karen had always believed the HOA made her powerful, but evidence made her powerless. And soon, the police investigation would make her consequences official. But that part belongs in the final chapter. The HOA board meeting was scheduled for the following Wednesday. And by the time that day rolled around, the entire neighborhood had already heard whispers full-on rumors about Karen's colorful incident, even though I hadn't publicly said anything. And neither had anyone else who'd been around that day. The bright, beet red dye staining her skin and hair had done all the talking. The stain hadn't washed off, not even after several showers, frantic scrubbing, and what must have been an entire bottle of bleach-based cleanser. Karen had tried to hide it with long sleeves, gloves, and a bandana wrapped around her head, but the color still seeped through like her guilt. People had spotted her trying to retrieve mail with her hood pulled tightly around her face. But it hadn't helped. You can hide a guilty conscience. And you certainly can hide a neon-colored dye that clings to skin like a spotlight. The HOA meeting started as usual with the board members sitting behind their folding table in the community center. Karen was also there, sitting farther back than usual, uncharacteristically quiet. She normally jabbered nonstop about rule violations, trash cans being half an inch over property lines, or lawns that weren't trimmed with the precision of a military haircut. But today she sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The bandana she wore didn't fully hide the faint red hue creeping from her hairline down her neck. And her hands, though gloved, were stained at the fingertips. People kept glancing at her, whispering quietly. She pretended not to hear. I took my seat in the front row, camera footage loaded on my phone and the printed timestamps tucked neatly in my pocket. I wasn't someone who enjoyed confrontation, but I was someone who valued justice. And after weeks of stolen packages and Karen's smug, holier-than-thou attitude, I wasn't going to let her get away with lying or manipulating the HOA into believing she was innocent. This was the day everything came into the light, literally and figuratively. The HOA president, Mr. Thompson, cleared his throat and started going through the usual agenda. Landscaping budget, pool repairs, upcoming holiday decorations. Karen shifted impatiently, as if she wanted the meeting to be over before the part she feared came up. But everyone knew why we were all there. Even the board members exchanged glances that said, "Let us address the elephant in the room, or rather, the human highlighter in the rooms." Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of normal business, Mr. Thompson folded his papers, clasped his hands, and looked directly at me. I believe we have a community concern that needs to be addressed. He said, I understand you have evidence regarding repeated package thefts in the neighborhood. Every head turned toward me. I stood, steady and calm. Karen sank lower into her chair. Yes, I said. For several weeks, packages addressed to me have been stolen directly from my porch. At first, I thought it was a delivery issue or maybe the carriers were leaving them somewhere else. But after losing over 6 shipments, I decided to put up security cameras. Whispers rippled across the room. But I continued. After reviewing the footage from multiple days, the culprit was clearly visible. I paused, letting the tension rest in the air for a moment. It was someone who lives here. Someone who should know better. Someone who has repeatedly claimed to value the rules. Karen's shoulders shot up defensively, and she crossed her arms carefully, as if afraid to reveal the dye stains beneath her sleeves. I played the first video clip on my phone, projecting it to the small screen that the HOA used for presentations. The footage showed my porch. A figure approached Karen, unmistakably with her arms crossed, looking around nervously before grabbing a medium-sized package and walking off with it. The room erupted softly with gasps and muttered words like, I knew it. Unbelievable. And she always seemed off. Karen lurched forward in her seat. That is not. That could be anyone's. The footage is grainy. You can even clearly see the face. I switched to the next clip. A closer angle, capturing Karen's profile perfectly as she tucked the box under her arm and hurried toward her house. This time, there was no denying it. Karen's face turned even redder than the dye. That S taken completely out of context. She sputtered. I was just cleaning up. Yes, that S right. Someone left a package unattended. And I was. You were stealing it. A neighbor snapped from behind her. Don't insult our intelligence. Karen swung around to glare at them. But the effect was ruined by the streaks of dye still visible on her jawline. People snickered. Mr. Thompson lifted a hand for silence before turning back to me. Do you have more? Oh yes, I said. One more clip. The most recent one. I pulled up the video of her stealing the dye trap package. The footage showed her approaching, looking around, grabbing it, and walking away. Then, about 8 seconds later, a muffled thump from inside her house, followed by a scream so shrill that even the camera's cheap microphone captured it clearly. The room roared with laughter. Karen slammed her gloved fist on the table. This is entrapment. This is harassment. You set me up. I leveled my gaze at her. I set up a security measure on my own property because someone kept committing a crime. You chose to steal it. If you hadn't, nothing would have happened. I was trying to protect the neighborhood. She screeched. Packages left unattended are a safety risk. Is that why you opened it inside your house? I asked calmly. More laughter. Another neighbor whispered loudly. Safety risk. More like sticky fingers. Karen stood so abruptly her chair clattered backward. She pointed at me with a dye-stained glove. P.S. lying. He edited the footage. This is a witch hunt because I enforce the rules around here, and people don't like being held accountable. You enforced rules that benefited you. Someone countered. But you don't follow any yourself. She yelled at me for putting my trash bin out too early. Another neighbor added. She gave my daughter a written warning for chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Said another. And she tried to fine me for having a Halloween decoration she didn't like. One by one, neighbors stood and shared their own experiences. It was like the floodgates had opened. Years of pent-up frustration poured out. Karen had made life miserable for so many people in the neighborhood that everyone had a story. Every voice raised against her chipped away at her defenses. Enough, she shrieked. But her voice cracked, and she sat down heavily. Her bravado was gone. She looked small, defeated, and oddly afraid. Mr. Thompson waited for the noise to die down before clearing his throat. Karen, he said slowly, we have seen video evidence. We have heard testimonies from multiple residents. Package theft is a serious violation not only of HOA rules, but also of state law. Karen's lip trembled. It was just a misunderstanding. She whispered. It was repeated theft. He corrected. Weeks of it. And when confronted, you lied, manipulated, and tried to blame others. The room went silent. Karen looked around as if searching for anyone to defend her. But no one did. Even her closest neighbor, who used to join her in petty complaints, sat with his arms crossed, refusing to meet her eyes. Mr. Thompson continued. As per HOA bylaws, the board is imposing the following consequences. An immediate fine of $1,500 for theft and community disruption. The requirement to reimburse all stolen items. Mandatory removal from the compliance committee. And a 6-month probation period. Any further violations will result in eviction proceedings. Karen's mouth fell open. Eviction? You can't evict me. If your behavior continues. The vice president replied. The bylaws allow for it. Your actions have damaged trust in this community. Karen's eyes welled with tears. I am sorry. Kind. But I got caught. Kind. She grabbed her fallen chair, sank back into it, and stared at the floor. Defeated. The meeting continued briefly, but the tone had changed completely. Neighbors chatted softly. Relieved. A weight had lifted. People were smiling at each other, something rare during HOA meetings. When it ended, several neighbors approached me, thanking me for standing up to her. People who had never spoken to me before shook my hand. Even the reserved ones nodded in approval. As I walked out of the community center, I saw Karen lingering near the exit. She looked tired and cornered, her pride crumbling. When our eyes met, she flinched but still tried to muster some dignity. This isn't over, she muttered weakly. For your sake. I replied. I hope it is. She didn't answer. The next few weeks were quiet, peaceful. Even packages stayed exactly where they were delivered. No more petty notes appeared on doors. No more complaints about trivial things. Karen kept to herself, rarely leaving her house. The dye on her skin eventually faded, but the stain on her reputation did not. And the neighborhoods. It finally felt like a community again. All because karma arrived in a bright red package.